Yeon-Myeong's sharp gaze fixed on the Taoist, his mind already bracing for yet another crisis. The alliance leader's murmured observation, though quiet, carried the weight of his concern. The implications of the Taoist's sudden appearance only added another layer of complexity to the precarious situation, leaving Yeon-Myeong no choice but to confront this new development head-on. The man stumbled into the room, his robes torn and his body bruised, every breath labored as though he had run for days. His frantic demeanor drew the immediate attention of all present, his desperation cutting through the tense atmosphere. His eyes darted toward Yeon-Myeong, and with what little strength he had left, he addressed the leader of the Righteous Heaven Alliance, pleading for help. Yeon-Myeong's gaze narrowed, his calm yet commanding presence steadying the room. He urged the man to compose himself, asking for clarity about the situation in Kongtong and Kunlun. The man wasted no time, his voice trembling as he delivered the grim news. Grandmaster Tihyo and the Kunlun demon immortal, both pillars of their respective sects, had fallen victim to a mysterious and deadly poison. The revelation struck Yeon-Myeong like a blade, his composed facade faltering momentarily. Poison, its insidious nature and devastating effect, brought a flood of memories to the forefront of his mind. His thoughts turned to a moment not long ago, a moment of strategy and precaution. He had entrusted Tang Yeon-Myeong, the fourth elder, with the killing bird flower, a substance counted among the 10 poisons, known for its lethality. At the time, Yeon-Myeong had been acutely aware of the growing power of the demonic forces, including masters who had reached the extreme demon realm. He had deemed it necessary to be prepared for such threats, even if it meant wielding something as dangerous as the killing bird flower. However, he had issued strict instructions to Tang Yeon-Myeong to keep the poison's existence a secret from the second and fifth elders. His reasoning had been clear. While Tang Yeon-Myeong had proven his loyalty, the other elders had always operated with their own agendas, their ambitions veiled in shadow. Yeon-Myeong had suspected that they were quietly scheming, their loyalty to the alliance tempered by their personal aspirations. Allowing the poison to fall into their hands would have invited chaos and undermined the delicate balance of trust he had worked so hard to maintain. The memory burned vividly in Yeon-Myeong's mind as he processed the dire news. Had the poison he entrusted to Tang Yeon-Myeong somehow been used improperly? Or worse, had it fallen into the wrong hands despite his precautions? The weight of the messenger's words sent a surge of fury through Yeon-Myeong, his usually composed demeanor fracturing under the strain. His voice cut through the air like a blade as he demanded answers about the forces his family had dispatched to aid the sect. Unintentionally, his rising anger manifested in a wave of oppressive killing intent, thick and suffocating, filling the room with an almost tangible pressure. The messenger, though battered and weary, instinctively stiffened under the weight of Yeon-Myeong's presence. His thoughts raced, marveling at the sheer intensity of the killing aura that seemed to press down on him like an iron shroud. It was unlike anything he had encountered, a force that left his mind trembling even as he struggled to muster a coherent response. Amid the tension, a familiar voice echoed within Yeon-Myeong's mind. The Imugi, his ever-watchful spirit companion, chided him, its tone both sharp and teasing. The spirit's words served as a grounding force, reminding Yeon-Myeong to temper his emotions. Its reasoning was straightforward. If the messenger had come with deceitful intent, he would have brought accusations, not pleas for aid. The situation demanded understanding, not an escalation of hostility. Realizing the weight of his earlier outburst, Yeon-Myeong took a moment to regain his composure. The room, still heavy with residual tension, began to settle as he addressed the battered messenger with measured calm, signaling his readiness to listen. The man, still humbled by the oppressive aura he had endured, recounted the grim sequence of events with unwavering detail. The Tianshan Mountains, with their treacherous terrain ideal for ambushes, had been entrusted to the Tang family to guard the rear flank. However, when contact with the Tang family was abruptly lost, a reconnaissance revealed a devastating truth. The support forces had been completely annihilated. The signs pointed to a sudden and overwhelming assault, likely by a master of the extreme demon realm, though the specifics remained uncertain. The messenger then delved into the harrowing encounter that followed. After the annihilation of the Tang forces, the demonic sect launched a fierce offensive. Leading the charge were the left and right envoys, both formidable extreme demon realm masters and trusted aides of the demonic sect leader. On the righteous side, Grandmaster Tihyo and the Kunlun demon immortal took the field, their combined might proving a strong counter to the enemy forces. In the heart of the battle, the righteous faction began to gain an advantage. Grandmaster Tihyo's demon-subduing sword technique wielded immense power, suppressing the demonic sect's energy and turning the tide in favor of the alliance. The clash of techniques, energies, and resolve seemed to signal a potential victory. But just as hope began to take root, an unforeseen variable emerged. Amid the chaos of the earth-shaking confrontation between masters of the flowering state and the extreme demon realm, a shadowy figure intervened. The individual introduced themselves as the Poison Demon, their presence altering the trajectory of the battle in an instant. With unparalleled precision, they unleashed their craft, poisoning both Grandmaster Tihyo and the Kunlun demon immortal before disappearing into the fray. The weight of the revelation settled heavily upon Yeon-Myeong. The poisoning of such powerful figures wasn't just a strategic blow. It was a symbol of the cunning and ruthlessness of the demonic sect. The battlefield, once a place of calculated warfare, had now become a stage for unpredictable and deadly tactics. The implications of this development demanded immediate action and deeper reflection on the dangers ahead. Deep within the shadowy recesses of the underground facility of the heavenly demon cult, a figure stirred in the dim light. Munchen's eyes fluttered open, the damp, oppressive air weighing heavily on his senses. As awareness seeped back into him, confusion clouded his features. Chains bound his wrists and ankles, securing him firmly to the cold stone wall. His mind raced as fragmented memories surfaced, piecing together the moments before his capture. The last thing he recalled was seeking treatment for his injured arm, a desperate measure that led him to this perilous place. But this was far from what he had expected. Tension coiled in his chest as the reality of his predicament set in. His voice, low and bitter, echoed faintly in the room as he murmured to himself, struggling to make sense of his situation. The pact his grandfather had struck with the demonic cult replayed in his mind, the terms of their agreement now suspect. A flicker of unease crossed his face as he pondered the cult's true intentions. Before he could delve further into his thoughts, the sound of approaching footsteps broke the heavy silence. The door creaked open, revealing a figure who stepped into the chamber with a deliberate air. It was Baek Soyeon, her presence commanding and enigmatic. The faint light caught the mischievous glint in her eyes, her demeanor radiating confidence and a faint air of mockery. Her gaze settled on Moonchon, studying him like a specimen under her care. Despite the chains and his vulnerability, she seemed unfazed. Her posture relaxed and voice carrying a sly amusement as she assessed the young Tang family member before her. There was no warmth in her stance, only a detached interest as though she were inspecting a puzzle that needed solving. The so-called healer of the demonic cult, here to mend the very arm that had brought him into their grasp. Yet, the air between them bristled with unspoken tension, the underlying motives of both the healer and the cult remaining veiled, leaving Moonchon to wonder if his treatment would come at a cost far greater than he anticipated. Munchen's gaze fell upon the figure who had entered the chamber, his expression tinged with skepticism and curiosity. The woman before him carried herself with a confidence that seemed out of place in the grim atmosphere of the facility. Her youthful appearance and composed demeanor clashed with the title she bore, the infamous demon healer of the heavenly demon cult. A flicker of surprise crossed Munchen's face as he took in the sight of her. Though bound and vulnerable, his mind was sharp, noting every detail about her, from her relaxed stance to the faint smirk that hinted at amusement. He muttered under his breath, as if grappling with the unexpected nature of his predicament. Soyeon, unfazed by his reaction, took a step closer, her eyes scanning him with clinical precision. Her expression shifted into one of teasing amusement, as though finding entertainment in his unease. Her casual confidence gave no indication of malice, yet her words carried an edge, challenging Munchen's composure further. She bent slightly to examine his injured arm, her movements efficient and practiced. Her sharp eyes traced the damage, noting the ruined veins beneath his skin. A sigh escaped her lips, the sound tinged with a mixture of exasperation and intrigue. It was clear to her that conventional methods of treatment would be of little use. His condition was far more severe than most. Munchen's thoughts churned as her observations cut through the haze of his anger and frustration. Her words, though calm, struck a nerve. They brought his own simmering rage to the forefront, unearthing the memories of betrayal and ambition that burned within him. His jaw clenched, and his eyes hardened, the weight of his grudge pressing down on him. The injury was not just a wound to his body but an insult to his pride, a cruel reminder of the position he believed was stolen from him. Revenge consumed his thoughts as his gaze bore into the stone wall, the fiery resolve in his heart growing stronger with each passing moment. Once his arm was restored, there would be no hesitation. His path was set, and his retribution would be swift and unrelenting. Soyeon stood quietly, her gaze fixed on Munchin's injured arm as she mulled over the possibilities. After a moment, she let out a soft murmur, almost to herself, as if finalizing her decision. The answer was clear to her. His arm, ravaged as it was, could not be salvaged by conventional means. Replacing it entirely would yield a stronger result, a more fitting solution for someone seeking to reclaim their martial prowess. Her proposal, however, struck Munchan like a thunderbolt. Disbelief flickered across his face, his mind struggling to process the extreme nature of her suggestion. He had endured too much, sacrificed too greatly, to accept such a drastic measure. The thought of losing his arm entirely churned his stomach, filling him with dread. His voice rose, desperate for another solution, anything but this. Soyeon, unperturbed by his reaction, met his gaze with the same unwavering confidence. She offered another path, one that carried its own risks and implications. If Munchan was willing to forsake his clan's righteous principles and delve into the forbidden world of demonic arts, there was a chance to not only heal his arm but surpass his current limitations. The proposal dangled before him like a double-edged blade, its allure undeniable yet fraught with consequences. Munchin's thoughts roiled as he considered her words. The idea of abandoning the Tang clan's ideals, embracing the very thing they stood against, was an affront to everything he had been taught. Yet the promise of a restored arm, of regaining his strength and rising above his current state, was equally impossible to ignore. Soyeon's voice cut through his turmoil, sharp and resolute. She elaborated on the nature of the art she spoke of, the immortal demonic art, a technique shrouded in mystery and power. With it, Munchan could achieve the impossible, gaining regenerative abilities so profound that even death itself could be defied. The implications were staggering, the potential immense. But the art was not freely given. It came with a price, one far beyond the reach of ordinary cultivators. The room fell into a heavy silence as her words settled over Munchan. The weight of her proposition bore down on him, forcing him to confront the choices before him. To sever his ties with his past and embrace the forbidden? Munchan's hesitation lingered, the weight of Soyeon's offer pressing heavily on his mind. The gravity of the decision loomed before him, a precipice he could not ignore. His lips parted, his voice betraying his inner turmoil as he sought clarity amidst the chaos of his thoughts.